The Mysterious Adventures of Arsène Lupin, Episode 4, The Shadow of Arsène Lupin. Welcome back, detective. We've watched Lupin solve locked rooms, expose criminal networks, and uncover financial murders. But today brings a case that strikes at something more personal than any crime he's investigated. When someone begins stealing not just jewels, but Lupin's identity itself. Our gentleman thief discovers that protecting your reputation is harder than building it. What happens when your legend becomes someone else's costume? Picture this. January 1910, Paris. The newspapers explode with scandal. Arsène Lupin robs elderly widow. Gentleman thief becomes common brute. The article describes a violent home invasion where Lupin terrorized an 80-year-old woman, struck her companion unconscious, and stole her late husband's modest collection of family jewelry. The description of the thief matches Lupin perfectly, right down to the calling card left behind, with compliments, Arsène Lupin. But here's what troubles me as I read this over breakfast with Lupin. He sits across from me, genuinely shocked, genuinely angry. "I was in Lyon that night," he says quietly, "consulting on a museum security system, ironically, being paid to prevent theft. I have witnesses, receipts, train tickets. I didn't commit this robbery. Someone is using my name. Think about the implications. My apprentice for a criminal whose reputation is built on being a gentleman thief with a code of honor. This is worse than any arrest. Someone has stolen not his property, but his identity. His carefully cultivated legend, his most valuable asset, the name Arsène Lupin, and everything it represents. Within days, more crimes appear bearing Lupin's signature. A brutal beating during a street robbery. A crude burglary that damages priceless art. A confident scheme targeting war widows. Each perpetrator claims to be Arsène Lupin, leaves calling cards, adopts his theatrical style, but strips away all the honor and artistry that define him. This is identity assassination, Lupin tells Inspector Ganimard when they meet to discuss the crisis. Someone is deliberately destroying my reputation by committing the exact crimes I would never commit. Every newspaper now questions whether I was ever truly a gentleman thief or just a thug with good publicity. Ganimard's surprisingly sympathetic nods. "I've spent years trying to catch you, Lupin. But I know your methods. These recent crimes aren't yours. They're too crude, too cruel, too pointless. But who would benefit from destroying Lupin's reputation? And more puzzling, why multiple criminals? The crimes occur simultaneously across Paris, committed by different people using the same identity. It's not one impersonator, but several, all claiming to be Arsène Lupin. Someone has weaponized his name, turning it into a franchise of violence and cruelty. Lupin begins investigating his own shadow, tracking these false Lupins through criminal networks. What he discovers is disturbing. A criminal named Étienne Léandri has created an underground business selling Arsène Lupin identities to common criminals. For a fee, Léandri provides them with calling cards, teaches them Lupin's mannerisms, gives them copies of his signature style, and sends them out to commit crimes under his name. It's criminal franchising. Lupin explains to me with grudging admiration for the audacity. Léandri realized, my name has value. It intimidates victims, fascinates press, attracts public attention. So he's selling it like a brand, licensing Arsène Lupin to anyone willing to pay. The genius is that each crime damages my reputation further, making his next sale easier because criminals believe using my tarnished name will attract less scrutiny. Think about this perverse logic, detective. Léandri profits from destroying the very name he's selling. The more his false Lupins commit brutal crimes, the less special Arsène Lupin becomes, the more normalized violence under that name appears. It's reputational strip mining, extracting value until nothing remains but an empty, corrupted brand. But here's what Léandri didn't anticipate. The real Arsène Lupin would investigate these crimes more thoroughly than any detective because his motivation is intensely personal. This isn't about justice or stopping crime. This is about reclaiming stolen identity, protecting the legend he's built through years of careful criminal artistry. Lupin goes undercover in the criminal underworld, not difficult for him since he already operates there, presenting himself as a thug, interested in purchasing an Arsène Lupin identity. Through intermediaries, he arranges a meeting with Léandri at a shabby warehouse in Belleville, far from the elegant settings where the real Lupin operates. Léandri is everything Lupin isn't. Crude, mercenary, utterly without the artistic sensibility that defines gentleman thievery. "You want to be Arsène Lupin?" he asks, with a gap-toothed grin. 5,000 francs gets you the complete package. Calling cards, signature techniques, even a custom disguise kit. You commit crimes under his name, keep what you steal, and he takes the blame. Perfect business model. Lupin, disguised as a Russian criminal named Sergei, plays along. But the real Lupin, won't he object to this? Léandri laughs. What can he do? Report me to police. Arrest this man for stealing my criminal identity. He's trapped. The more he protests, the guiltier he appears, and every crime committed under his name diminishes him. Soon, Arsène Lupin will mean nothing, just another common thief's alias. That's when his legend dies completely. Notice the psychological cruelty here. My apprentice, Léandri, isn't just stealing Lupin's identity, he's deliberately murdering the legend itself, destroying years of carefully built reputation through systematic degradation. It's reputational homicide, killing not the person but the persona. But Lupin has a plan. He purchases the Arsène Lupin package, paying 5,000 francs for his own stolen identity. Léandri provides everything promised: calling cards poorly forged, instruction manual laughably inaccurate about his methods, and a disguise kit, theatrical but cheap. "Go forth and be Lupin," Léandri says with mock grandeur. "Make the name worthless." Over the next week, Lupin does something unexpected. He commits crimes as the false Lupin, but with a twist. Each crime is theatrical, harmless, and deliberately absurd. He robs a wealthy man who's actually paying him to stage the theft for insurance fraud. He steals a painting from a gallery that's actually donating it to an orphanage. He burglarizes a mansion that belongs to a friend who's in on the scheme. Each false crime under the Lupin name gets media attention. But reporters notice something odd. These crimes are silly, victimless, almost like pranks. Arsène Lupin steals nothing of value in elaborate joke robbery, reads one headline. Gentleman, thief, or clown. Recent Lupin crimes baffle authorities, reads another. Think about what Lupin is doing, detective. He's diluting his stolen identity with absurdity, making Arsène Lupin crimes so ridiculous that the earlier brutal robberies start seeming inconsistent, questionable, possibly not his work at all. He's fighting reputational damage with reputational confusion. But he needs more than confusion. He needs to expose Léandri and shut down the entire operation. So Lupin stages one final crime that will draw out all the false Lupins simultaneously. He spreads word through criminal networks that Arsène Lupin will rob the Countess de Crécy's jewelry exhibition on January 28 at her mansion, an impossible target with extraordinary security. This announcement creates chaos among Léandri's customers. Multiple false Lupins plan to attempt the robbery, each believing they're the one true Lupin impersonator. Léandri himself gets nervous. If multiple Lupins show up simultaneously, the fraud will be exposed. So he arranges to be there himself to coordinate his franchisees and prevent disaster. The night of January 28th arrives. The Countess's mansion, whose owner Lupin has secretly informed of the plan, is filled with guests, guards, and hidden police officers. Inspector Ganimard coordinates security, knowing Lupin's real plan even if others don't. And then, throughout the evening, they begin arriving. The false Lupins. First comes a crude thug wearing a cheap gentleman's costume, following Léandri's instruction manual like a recipe. Then a nervous con artist who's overdressed for the occasion. Then a violent burglar who immediately seems wrong for the sophisticated environment. Eventually, 7 different Arsène Lupins are operating in and around the mansion, none knowing the others exist, all following slightly different versions of what they think Lupin would do. The result is chaos. Glorious, revealing chaos. The thuggish Lupin tries to threaten guests. The nervous Lupin attempts a confidence scheme. The violent Lupin starts breaking into rooms. They stumble into each other, argue about who's the real Lupin, create a scene that makes clear no actual Arsène Lupin is present because the real one would never be this disorganized or amateurish. And then Léandri arrives to manage his chaotic franchisees and walks directly into Ganimard's trap. Lupin himself, the real one, emerges from where he's been watching the farce. Gentlemen, allow me to introduce the real criminal enterprise here. Not these poor fools who purchased a false identity, but the man who sold it to them. The police arrest Léandri and all 7 false Lupins. The evidence is overwhelming. Léandri's business records showing dozens of Arsène Lupin identity sales. Testimony from arrested criminals admitting they purchased the identity. And most damning, the farcical display at the mansion, proving none of them could actually be the sophisticated gentleman thief. At trial, Léandri tries to argue he was simply providing a service. Criminals need identities. I supplied them. How is this different from what Lupin himself does? But the judge sees through it. You deliberately damaged an individual's reputation for profit. The fact that the individual is himself a criminal doesn't make your fraud legal. You're convicted of identity theft, fraud, and conspiracy. The newspapers publish retractions. False Lupins exposed. Gentleman thief's reputation restored. Public opinion shifts back to viewing Lupin as the sophisticated criminal he actually is, distinct from the crude thugs who borrowed his name. The elaborate sting at the Countess's mansion becomes legendary. Proof that the real Lupin operates on a completely different level than common criminals. But here's what Lupin finds most satisfying. The Countess de Crécy, grateful that he prevented actual robbery of her jewels, makes a public statement. I now understand what distinguishes Arsène Lupin from ordinary thieves. He may steal jewels, but he would never steal dignity. The false Lupins were crude and threatening. The real Lupin protected my guests while exposing frauds. Character matters, even in criminals. So tell me, detective, what does this case teach us about identity and reputation? Lupin's legend was valuable, precisely because it was rare, distinctive, earned through consistent behavior. When Léandri tried to franchise it, he destroyed the very thing that made it valuable. You cannot mass-produce uniqueness. You cannot commodify authenticity. Inspector Ganimard offers an olive branch. After the case concludes, you know, Lupin, I'm supposed to arrest you. But today you stopped 7 crimes, exposed a fraud ring, and protected innocent people. Makes my job quite complicated. Lupin smiles. Think of it as outsourcing, Inspector. You're too busy with real criminals to chase a gentleman thief who occasionally helps solve cases. The false Lupins, interestingly, receive relatively light sentences. The judge recognizes they were victims of fraud themselves, paying for an identity that never worked as promised. Several are deported, others serve short terms for attempted robbery. But Léandri receives 10 years for operating a criminal enterprise, a harsher sentence than Lupin himself would receive for any single theft. This case establishes something new in Lupin's legend. He's not just a thief who solves crimes, but a criminal who protects his reputation as fiercely as any legitimate businessman protects their brand. His name has value, and he'll defend that value against anyone who tries to degrade it. As January ends, Lupin reflects on the psychological toll of seeing his identity stolen and corrupted. You spend years building a reputation through careful work, maintaining standards, creating something distinctive. Then someone else wears it like a cheap costume and drags it through mud. It's violating in ways that actual theft isn't. They didn't steal my property, they stole my meaning. But the case also reveals how deeply Lupin's legend has embedded itself in French culture. People care about whether crimes are committed by the real Lupin or imposters. His reputation matters enough that its corruption becomes news. He's transcended simple criminality to become something more, a cultural figure whose identity has value beyond individual crimes. The most ironic aspect: Lupin successfully defended his criminal brand by working with police to arrest other criminals. He's protected his outlaw reputation through cooperation with law enforcement. The gentleman thief has become both more criminal and more legitimate simultaneously, a paradox only someone like Arsène Lupin could embody. Thank you for joining me through this season of Lupin's mysterious adventures. We've witnessed his transformation from pure thief to detective thief, seen him solve locked rooms and expose murderers, watched him defend the very identity that makes him wanted by police. Arsène Lupin has evolved into something unprecedented, a criminal who serves justice when it suits him, a thief who protects the innocent when convenient, an outlaw who operates by his own code of honor. Next season, we'll explore even grander adventures as Lupin faces his most ambitious challenge yet, 813, and the vast conspiracy that will test everything he's become. When personal ambition collides with national security, when love conflicts with loyalty, when the gentleman thief must choose between freedom and responsibility, what will Arsène Lupin decide? The greatest adventures await.